So Texas A&M named the 2021 SEC Coach of the Year, Joni Taylor, as the 8th women's basketball head coach in program history on March 23rd, 2022. She succeeds Hall of Famer Gary Blair and is inheriting a program that is one of 8 schools in the past 20 years to have a national title. Over the past 19 seasons, the program won 5 conference titles and reached the NCAA tournament 16 times. The Meridian, Mississippi native spent the first 7 years of her head coaching career with the Georgia women's basketball program. She amassed 140 victories with 64 wins in SEC play. Taylor took the Lady Bulldogs to 4 NCAA tournaments, including top 4 seeds in 2018 and 2021. Coach Taylor was named the SEC Coach of the Year in 20 and 21, and she was the youngest Coach of the Year honoree in SEC since 2010. In 2021, she led the Lady Bulldogs to the SEC Tournament Championship game for the first time since 2004. Taylor and South Carolina's Dawn Staley became the first pair of African-American female head coaches to coach against one another in the SEC Tournament title game. Before she was at Georgia, she served as an assistant coach at LSU, Louisiana Tech, and Troy, and as an associate head coach at Alabama and Louisiana Tech. At LSU and Alabama, she helped recruit top 5 prospects in 2010 and 11. She carried that recruiting prowess into her career as a coach, where she signed 3 top 15 classes in the last 4 seasons, including the number 7 signing class in 2022. After she is a 4-year letterman at Alabama, who will hold that against her. She earned her bachelor's degree in education in 2002 and helped lead the Crimson Tide to 4 postseason runs and recorded 716 points, 555 rebounds, and 103 block shots, which ranked 4th in the Crimson Tide's record book. While at Alabama, she was recognized as one of the most influential African Americans on campus in 2001, earned 3 SEC Community Service honors, and was awarded a postgraduate scholarship from the SEC. The Meridian High School Project was the 1997 Mississippi Gatorade Player of the Year. She also won 3 state titles in track and field, and was selected as the school homecoming team. She and her husband Darius have 2 daughters, JC and Drew. So let's give her a warm welcome.
Thank you, Tracy. How's everybody doing? Good. I am so excited to be here. I want this to be really interactive. If I am talking and you have a question, please stop me, because I get going and then I'll forget to come back later. And I don't want you to forget your question either, because if you're like me, my mind, after about 2 minutes, that's all the capacity I have to remember anything. So I want this to be really formal, but informal, interactive. This is our time together. I really enjoy doing this. And I just want to thank you guys for having me. I'm super excited. So let's get started talking about next level success. You heard Tracy say a whole lot of things that sound a whole lot better than what they really, really are. I am from Meridian, Mississippi, small town, obviously, in the South. And my parents just instilled in my brother and I at a very early age, you've got to be twice as good, right? Everything we did, it was just work hard, work smart, hold yourself accountable, and no dream is too big. And I was very fortunate to, even in Mississippi, maybe not have somebody in my hometown who I could model or emulate things after, but Oprah Winfrey is from Mississippi, right? Morgan Freeman is from Mississippi. Robin Roberts is from Mississippi. So I could look on TV and find someone from my state who had done really, really, really good things. And my parents, being educators, really taught us at an early age to apply ourselves, put ourselves around good people, and that the sky was the limit. And anything that we set our mind to, they challenged us to do it. So that's really what I want to talk to you about in terms of how to reach next level success. I think the first thing to think about when you talk about next level success is Figuring out how you're supposed to be who you're created to be. What's your passion? What's your thing that wakes you up every morning? I am super fortunate and blessed that I wake up every day and throw on a pair of sweats and go coach basketball, right? I mean, seriously, is there stressors to that job? Is it a lot of pressure? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, I have a chance to change the lives and help shape the lives of young women with a round 28.5 basketball. That basketball gave me the opportunity to get on a plane for the very first time in my life when I got to college. It is what allowed me to go to Hawaii for free, and San Juan, and Mexico, and Spain, and Italy, and Argentina, and all of these places that I never would have been able to go. My parents would have never been able to pay for me to go if it wasn't for this basketball. So I'm very fortunate that I found my passion at an early age, and it is still allowing me to do and spread my gift. And I have a lot of fun doing it. But how do you figure that out? I think that the biggest thing is knowing who you are. It is very hard to be passionate about something and lead other people if you don't know who you are. And so how do you figure that out? You know, I started at a young age. You get in college, you get in high school even, and you have teammates. And the great thing about that is that you have people who are just like you, and you have people who are from different backgrounds than you all together. At the end of the day, you've got to come together and get on the same page and go in the same direction. And so I quickly started figuring out when they wanted to go out or there were things happening, like, what are my deal breakers? What are my non-negotiables? I may not have it figured out yet, but I can figure out what's a deal breaker for me. You know, and sometimes when we get so caught up in trying to figure out what I want, that the easy way to do it is to figure out what you don't want. And when you can figure out what you don't want, then that list gets pretty small and you kind of narrow yourself into what it is you want to do. So I figured out pretty quickly, you know, what my non-negotiables were, what my deal breakers were, and that allowed me to know what my values were. Because if you're not clear on your values, then you can't be clear with your trade-offs. Right? So when it's time to make life decisions, new job, new promotion, who I'm working for, who I'm working with, what I will tolerate, what I want. If you don't have those non-negotiables, then it gets really murky and it becomes really hard for you to know what to say yes to and what to say no to. So that would be the first thing I would say to you, is figure those things out, right? And after we figure them out, mine has changed. I'm 44, right? I started that when I was about 25, 26. It looks a lot different now than it did at 26. So if you've already done that, great. When's the last time you pulled it out of your pocket to tweak it a little bit, right? To challenge yourself a little bit more in terms of what those values are. How can you help others? What those deal breakers are. The other thing is, I said it earlier, you really cannot lead others if you cannot lead yourself. Do you know who you are? Do you know who you are? You know, I say all the time, because even we get caught up in the phone, right? We talk about the younger generation and social media, but I have to admit, I look up sometimes and I've been on it for 20 minutes and I went on there to do one thing and then I just got down the rabbit hole, right? So, you know, turn off the TV, take some time for yourself. You heard Tracy say, I have 2 small kids, I have a husband, life is crazy, but I also have a pocket of time that is mine and it is mine only, and I will not compromise it for anyone. Because if I don't have that time to myself, to check in with myself, to make sure that I'm good, that my cup is full, how can I lead others? And how can I serve others? And how can I give others my best if I'm not at my best? So I challenge all of you, if you don't have that quiet time, mine is early in the morning. Don't gasp when I say this. I'm a 4 a.m.er. Oh, we got a couple 4 a.m.ers in the room. Yes. We had 3. That's the most I've never seen 3 in a room before. I wake up at 4 a.m. every day. And from 4 to 6:30, that's my time. Everybody sleep. Nobody's going to wake me up. Nobody's going to ask me for anything. And that is my time to myself, to read, to pray, to work out, and to just get myself centered and focused and to make sure that I'm my best self. Because if I'm not my best self at 10 o'clock when a player walks in and needs advice, or one of our coworkers walks in and needs something, how am I going to be on point to give her the best advice she needs for her life if I'm not in the right headspace? And so that's a responsibility we all have, is to make sure that we're checking in. We know how to lead ourselves. We know what it is we stand for, what kind of leader we are. Are we a servant leader? Are we a do what I say leader? What type of leader are you? But to figure that out, you've got to continue to spend time with yourself and make sure that your self-care is really, really important. The other thing is I try to surround myself with people that are going to challenge me. I say all the time, like I hire people smarter than me and then I get the hell out of the way. Like I'm being really serious. All the time, somebody will come ask me something and you'll hear me say, that's a Christina question. I don't know. Go ask Christina. Like I want people around me that are going to challenge me, make me better. I don't want people who are going to say yes to me, right? I don't want yes people. I want people who are going to bring really good, thoughtful, provoking ideas, be responsible for their area, and then run with it, right? And I think it's really important that we do that, because if we're not constantly learning and putting ourselves around people who are going to help us, who are going to challenge us, then we're going to stay stagnant, and then eventually we're going to get passed by. That also goes for your mentor group. Like I call it my circle of trust. Like I've got people who, when I've got a question, I'm struggling with something, I've got people who I can call. And those people are going to tell me the truth, whether I like it or not. They're going to say, hey, you know what? I don't have an answer for you, but let me pick up the phone and call so-and-so because she dealt with this about 2 years ago, the exact same thing, and she can help you. So you also have to know people and put yourself around people who can get you to the right person, right? And that doesn't happen if you're not around people who are as like-minded as you are. I'm not saying get rid of everybody in your life who's not on the same path you're on, but I am saying that you are who you surround yourself with. That is a factual statement. You are who you surround yourself with. So look at your best 6 people in your life, and those people will tell you who you are, right? They'll tell you who you are. Keep seeking knowledge. Challenge yourself. We already said it, like we never want to be the smartest person in the room. What books are you reading this summer, right? Every time I look up, there's something else that is more advanced in technology than the last time I learned it, right? What are we doing to stay on course, to stay ahead? Because as things are changing, I keep reading all this AI. You know, I keep saying, like, I have a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old, and by the time they get ready to go to college, what am I going to try to help them major in that's not going to be done by a robot? Right? So making sure you're continuing to seek knowledge, grow yourself, continue to be ready so that you can be marketable to have next level success. You know, a couple of things I learned really young is that someone's always watching you. So I played at Alabama, and my mom and dad were educators. They are both retired educators. My brother's in education, my degree's in secondary ed. I was going to be a high school counselor and a Christian counselor on the weekend. That was my path. I figured that out in about the 9th grade, and I was on it. So I was going to go to school, get my teaching degree, go to grad school, get my master's, teach 2 years, because then I don't know what it is now, but you have to teach in the classroom 2 years before you could be a counselor, right? Because they want you to have classroom experience. And then my 5th year at Alabama, I was done playing in 2001. I graduated in 2002 because I had to do student teaching, and they didn't let you student teach and play at the same time because you just missed too much classroom time. So I was my 5th year at Alabama, and I was working in the men's basketball office as a student assistant. And that is when my eyes just really opened up to how powerful coaches really are. I'm not being funny. I thought my coaches wore really cool Nike gear, watched some film, came to practice, and went home. And then when I was in the office every day and saw how much time they spend deciphering who they want to recruit and who they want to bring into a program and just the pieces of it, you know, making sure they're taking care of all the other things, I really call it the coaching bug. And at the end of my 5th year, I had a chance to go to grad school, which is what I thought I was going to do at Alabama. It's 91 miles from my house. I'm in my bubble. I can get to my parents, all my friends, my sorority sisters, my teammates are all right there. And then my assistant coach, Mike Murphy, called me one day and completely rocked my world. He said, hey, I need a favor. I said, sure, who do you have in town? Because even though I wasn't a player anymore, anytime they had prospects or recruits, they would always call me and say, hey, this young lady and her parents are coming to the game. Can you find them and sit with them and talk to them during the game? Do you want to come to lunch with us? So I was still kind of helping out in recruiting. And I said, sure, who do you have in town? Who do you want me to talk to? He said, well, I kind of have something like that in mind, but on a different level. I just got the head job at Troy University, and I want you to come be my recruiting coordinator. And I just could have dropped the phone. And I just said, but now I already know at this point that I kind of want to coach, but I still was going to go down the grad school path. And I started stumbling and stammering. And I said, Coach Murphy, I don't know how to break down film. I don't know how to do this. I can't do that. And he goes, it's fine. You know my philosophy. He was my post coach. So he was my position coach for 4 years. He was like, you know me, you know my philosophy. You have a great personality. You're great with people. The coaching part you'll catch on to. And I asked him, I said, well, can I think about it? And so obviously I took some time to think about it. And I said to myself, do I want to be comfortable or do I want to get thrown into the fire? And obviously I decided to throw myself into the fire, and it was the best decision I could have ever made. But in that, the first thing that stuck out to me was, this is a man who's been an assistant coach for 16 years. He finally has an opportunity to be a head coach, and he is calling a 22-year-old to be the recruiting coordinator. Wow. Now, I'm not perfect. I wasn't then, I'm not now, but I tried to be on time. I tried to do the right things. But what it said to me is, if I was a jerk, and if I wasn't on time, and if I didn't do the right things, he wouldn't have been calling me. Here he is. He could call anyone, and he's calling me. And so that was the first aha moment of, wow, like, you never know where your first opportunity is going to come from. And I surely didn't think he was going to be calling me. So I'm at Troy now. I'm there for 3 years. It was a great opportunity for me to learn, make mistakes. It's Division I, but it's not BCS, so your mistakes aren't on ESPN. We were white and maroon. The first time I washed the white uniforms, I pulled them out of the dryer. They were that color of that chair. Right? I mean, who knew? You couldn't wash the tights with the white. I didn't know. So I'm trying to figure out how to get it clear. And I go to Walmart, and there's this little pills that you can take and put in the washing machine, and it clears it all up. So anyway, I learned a lot of things. And so it helped me troubleshoot. It helped me figure some stuff out. We didn't have a ton of people around to do things. So I drove the bus, I swept the floors, I washed the clothes. I did everything. And I'm so glad that I did, because it's so funny. Sometimes now I see young assistant coaches, and they have a problem and they just get stuck. They have no idea what to do next. And so, I'm kind of going off a little bit, but on a tangent, but what I would say is, put your hands in everything. No job is too big or too small, because that keeps you around, and that keeps you valuable, and that keeps you thinking. Like, a lot of our young people don't know how to think through things. They're so used to being told what to do. So I'm grateful for that opportunity. The second thing I learned about someone always watching is, after being at Troy for 3 years, I got a phone call from Chris Long, who had just gotten a job at Louisiana Tech. Now, Chris Long is from Mississippi. He was a high school coach when I was in high school as a player, and then he became a college coach. So when I would see him on the road, when you go on the road recruiting, it's like all these people in a room, and they're just all lined up on the baseline, and everybody's watching kids, right? So you end up meeting people, talking to people, and you kind of figure out who's recruiting who, because I keep showing up to Christina's game, and the same coaches keep showing up. So I'm like, oh, they all must be recruiting her. So I've seen him a couple times. And then he calls me and he says, hey, I just got the job at Louisiana Tech, and I want you to come be my recruiting coordinator. And I'm like, don't I have to interview? Like, this is the second time that I've just kind of gotten a phone call. And so I kind of said to him, I said, well, I mean, don't I need to come out there and we need to talk and interview? And he goes, well, you're welcome to come out here to look around, to see the university. He goes, but I've been interviewing you for the last 3 years. All those times on the road, when we were talking and we were just casually talking, and I would say, hey, what do you think about that kid? Who does she remind you of? Or tell me what your thoughts on this. I was interviewing you then. Oh. So that was the other thing. Like, a lot of times your peers, they're watching, because their next level job, their next level success, they're trying to figure out who they're going to hire when they get an opportunity. So that moment taught me, we always think, oh, the 80's in the room. The CEO is here, right? The manager is here. Great. But the person sitting next to you that's about to be a manager, that's about to be a CEO, they're the ones watching you, because they need someone to hire once they get that job, whether that's to replace themselves or put you on their team. And that was a great lesson for me, that, again, somebody's always watching. So make sure that you're handling yourself in the right way. And so I started doing the same thing when I was probably into my second year at Louisiana Tech, my 5th year coaching overall. I realized I wanted to be a head coach, but I knew I wasn't ready. And so I started developing, learning, trying to make sure that I wasn't put in a box. That is the other thing. Sometimes as females and also as minorities, you get put in a box. Make sure you're not being put in a box, asked to do everything. Even if you don't have aspirations to take on that role one day, what does it hurt to know how to do it? To operate every piece of equipment, to run every piece of the program. What does it hurt to know how to do it? right? So I started making sure that I wasn't being put in a box. Just go recruit kids and bring me kids. No, I want to know how to do everything. I want to see the budget. I want to do scheduling. I want to make sure I'm a great scouter. I'm a great communicator. I lead some drills and practice. Make sure you don't get stuck in a box, right? A great way to do that is at the end of the year. I'm sure we all have evaluations, right? With our superiors, with our supervisors. And those end of the year evaluations, make sure you're asking for more. Now, one thing I will tell you is that you can't ask for more if you're not doing well what you're responsible for now. Okay? So make sure you're owning your yard. Whatever you're responsible for, I always say you're the head coach in that area. Make sure you're being a great head coach in your pieces right now before you come asking for more. But in those end of the year evaluations, if you've done what you're supposed to, I would be very shocked if your supervisor didn't allow you to kind of, if he doesn't give it to you, just ask to be in the room when the discussion is happening so you can at least hear it. That's another way to get next level of success, right? When I was at Georgia, I told Coach Landers, listen, I don't want scheduling. Scheduling is a bear when you're trying to make your schedule for the next season of who you're going to play. At that point, I did not want it, but I still wanted to be in the room to hear him talk about it to the person who had it. Same thing with the budget. It is a multi-million-dollar budget that we are running and managing. I didn't want to have it, but I wanted to be in the room to see how they figured it out. So there's several ways to still learn without adding it to your actual plate, but make sure you're doing those things. I think it's really important to keep yourself learning, to keep yourself growing and moving in the right direction. And as I realized that I wanted to be a head coach, as I was learning and spreading my wings and growing, I also kept a little notebook in my purse. And when I was on the road, I started doing exactly what Coach Long had done to me. I started figuring out when I have an opportunity to become a head coach, who was on my short list. And I had a list of females, males, grad assistants, director of operations, and it went on down the line. And it was pretty big because I did not know what level job I was going to get. If it was going to be Texas A&M, or Georgia, or was it going to be Troy, Louisiana Tech? So there's different levels to that. And it really helped me. And it's so funny, Chelsea Newton, who's the associate head coach here on our staff, I called her up when I got the job at Georgia and I said, hey, I'd love for you to come be the recruiting coordinator. She goes, what? Huh? Like, don't I need to, I said, I've been interviewing you for 3 years, girl. Couldn't wait to use that one. Couldn't wait to use that one. But make sure you know that somebody is always watching. And I would challenge you to start watching others as well. So that when you are put in a position that you need people around you, you already have somewhat of an idea. You've already circumvented and vented out your list so you can get straight to making those phone calls. Because the biggest thing you're going to do when you are in a position to do that, the people you put around you will more than likely have a lot to do with how successful you are. And that's not to say you don't ever make a mistake, but when you get it right the first time, it's magic. Our staff has been together for 8 years now, and it's a beautiful thing, right? We were very fortunate to add some pieces to that staff last year, but it's a really cool thing when you can say that you've been with people for that long and that you got it right the first time. I get asked a lot about work-life balance, right? There's a lot of, most of us are females in the room. I don't know how many of us are wives and mothers, but we're all daughters, sisters. You know, we all sometimes have responsibilities to something else. And I used to try to explain work-life balance. And then I was like, none of this is true. Like, it's not true for me. I don't have any work-life balance. I'm a workaholic. I'm a 3 on the Enneagram. Who knows anything about the Enneagram? I'm a straight up 3, like straight up 3 with a little bit of a 2. And so there is no balance for me. And so I started saying, like, it's not a balance. It's be where your feet are. That has been a lot more helpful for me than trying to talk about work-life balance. Be where your feet are. If I'm at work, then I'm at work. And I cannot take myself down the rabbit hole of what I'm missing with my daughters, right? What I'm missing with my husband. When I'm at home, I am at home. I walk in the door. I never walk in with on the phone. If I'm on a phone call, when I pull in, I will sit in the garage until I'm done. When I walk in the house, I put the phone down. Why? You just heard me say I'm up at 4 a.m. At 6:30, we are fortunate that our parents, his parents and my parents, alternate living with us to help us take care of our children. My husband is the GM of the Connecticut Sun, a WNBA team. So our lives are crazy, right? Christina manages our calendar. She needs a raise just for doing that. So our lives are crazy. And so we're fortunate to have a lot of help, but my things that I do, I drive them to school every morning. I drop them off at around 7:15, 7:20. And then I don't get home most nights until 7:30. And that's if I don't have a speaking engagement or a dinner, right? They go to bed at 8:30. So I've got about an hour max with my girls. Two things I try to do. I try to shower and eat before I go home. I'm not sure I've ever had dinner with them unless it was a holiday or we were on vacation. I don't eat dinner with them. It's really sad, right? Some of your faces are like, oh my gosh. They have dinner at 6 o'clock. I'm never home at 6 o'clock. So what I don't want to do when I walk in the door is say, hold on, let me shower. Hold on, let me eat. Now it's time for them to go to bed. And I've killed their entire spirit. So I shower at work before I go home, and I eat on the way home, or I eat at work before I get there. So that when I walk in, that hour feels like 4, because I am completely locked into what it is they're doing. So is the quality of time what I would love for it to be? Of course not. But the quantity, when I am there, they have me. So being where my feet are has really helped me stay present in what it is I'm doing and not be distracted by being at work thinking about what I'm missing, right? Or being at home thinking about work. And it has worked out pretty well. The other thing I did one day, a lot of times, especially after I got pregnant and I had JC, a lot of the media started asking me about work-life balance. How are you going to do this? How are you going to? And finally, you know what I said? I said, you just interviewed Kirby Smart. Did you ask him how he had about his work-life balance? He's got 2 small kids. Did you ask him that question? Like, why is it just women that you ask that question to? Right? So I kind of got a little spiky about it. I got a little saucy about it too, because people will project things on you. And we have to learn how to hear that and recognize it for what it is. And it's not that they were being malicious in any way, but it's still wrong. It's still wrong. Why do we have to have the burden or feel like feel guilty for having a career and having a family? And I think that's something that was really important to me to recognize that and not be unapologetic in how we do it. And I think the bottom line is what we're doing is we're showing younger people that there is a choice. Like, you don't have to have kids. You don't have to be married. But if you want to and you want to have a career, here it is. Like, there's not one or the other. And again, being from a small town in Mississippi, I sometimes felt like growing up that it was going to be one or the other for me. That's what I was told when I would go home when I was a young coach and I would go home to visit my family. I go to church on Sunday, and bless them, I love them all. But here come all the elders in our church. Well, baby, you're 28. Are you going to get married? Are you going to have some kids? And then I go home. Well, baby, you're 32. I got married at 36 and finally it stopped. But I mean, so again, being from the South, coming from a very Southern place, I felt that dynamic, and no way is wrong, but I definitely think it's important to make sure we know what we want to do and be unapologetic in doing it. Another thing that helped me in that journey was, how many of you have read the book Lean In or have heard of the book Lean In? It's so great, right? It's a book called Lean In by Nell Scovell and Sheryl Sandberg. Sheryl Sandberg used to be like second in charge at Facebook, right? Great book. And what it taught me, and I'm glad I read it when I did, because I was single at the time, no kids, and I was an assistant coach trying to figure out, like, okay, if I get married, I'm going to have to get out of coaching. Because when I look at people who are married with kids and women's basketball that are women, they are all head coaches, because assistant coaches, your schedule is not your own. Like, you were at the mercy's not the right word, but you just don't make your own schedule. Like, whatever your boss, your head coach says, that's the schedule you have. And so there's not a lot of wiggle room in that, depending on who you're working for. And so at the time I was saying, if I'm not a head coach by the time I get married, I may have to do something else, because I don't know how I'm going to, as an assistant coach, do this. And I'm projecting something that hasn't even happened. And so what the book taught me was, don't make decisions about things that haven't even happened yet, right? One of the things it talks about women we do is we get offered a promotion or a new opportunity, and we're like, well, when I get married, I'm not going to be able to do that and be a good wife. Or when I have kids, I'm not going to be able to have this type of job and manage my kids. So you turn it down and you're not even married. Heck, you're not even dating anybody. Take the promotion if you want it. Take the next job. And then guess what? If you get married and it doesn't work, you can always go back to doing what you're doing now. If you have kids and you feel like you're missing out and this is not what you wanted and you want more time with your kids, you can always go back to doing what you were doing before. But don't close a door because you're projecting something in your future that is not even reality. And I think that's something we all need to hear. And it really changed my life once I read that book and saw that. The other thing in that book it talks about is a professor at Stanford, right? She put out a resume. And it's a resume of a woman, a college girl who just was really, really good in her career. She'd advanced really fast. She was on the top, like a lot of councils and organizations, and she took her name off of it and put a guy's name on it. She handed it out to the class and she goes, read this resume, really mark through it with a fine comb and tell me what you think about this person and how they got to where they are now. The next day, the class comes back and she's asking about it. Everybody, male and female in the room. Oh, he worked really hard. He was a go-getter. He put himself in the right places. He did this, he did that, he did this. You guys remember this story in the book at all? Right? Next day, week later, same resume. She puts the young lady's name on it, who the resume really belonged to, asked her class to kind of do the same thing, dissect it, talk about it. They come back later. Excuse my language, she was a bitch. She must have slept her way to the top. She must have done this, blah, 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 blah. And these were males and females who had this same reaction. And so it's also, and this wasn't too long ago when that study came out, but it's also shocking how hard we are on ourselves sometimes as women. And so it's just really important to make sure that we don't put ourselves into an unconscious bias or a stereotype about things because we see women leaders, because it is challenging, right? A male can get a tech and he's passionate about it, and we get a tech and we are angry and we can't control our emotions. And so it's just really easy to start making those types of comparisons. And so that book is really good. I would challenge you to read it if you haven't. And the last thing I'll tell you is to take risk, right? You know, one of the things I always try to do is I try to run towards the fear, not fear that is like something bad is about to happen. We got to get the heck out of here. Don't run towards that kind of fear. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about that fear of I had a chance to go to grad school at Alabama and be comfortable, or go to Troy and get thrown into the fire and not know what the heck I was doing. And everything in me wanted to be comfortable and stay in my comfort zone. And I'm sick to my stomach trying to think about what to do. And I ran to the fear. And it was the best. I would not be standing here if I had not done that. Right. Anytime I feel like I've gotten comfortable, I now know it's my time to raise the level and do something different. That doesn't mean leave where I am, but what can I do to continue to still learn and grow? That type of feeling, we've all had that feeling before. Y'all know what I'm talking about, right? Listen to that thing. That has never been wrong for me. So don't be afraid to take risk. A lot of times as females, again, there's a job opportunity, there's a promotion, there's a speaking event, whatever it is, and we get asked that we want to do it and we don't raise our hands because, oh my gosh, I'm not sure if I'm qualified. I haven't practiced that. I've never done that before. I didn't study that. And men get asked the same question. They all raise their hand. And it's not that they're qualified either, or that they've studied for it all the time. They're just more confident in themselves than we are. And we've got to be the same way. We've got to be confident. We've got to bet on ourselves, right? Because one thing we are going to do is work hard and figure it out. So don't be afraid to take risk. And then, you know, something that I constantly tell our players is to bring your best. Bring your best in everything that you do. For everything we've already said is a reason for you to bring your best. You know, we've all taken a test before, and we've all studied really, really well for that test and turned it in, walked away, sat down, felt good about it, right? Teacher brings it back, turn it over real quick because we knew we studied for it. Anybody been there before? How many of us have not studied for a test before. Right? We know that feeling too. Oh, shoot. Oh, shoot. Put it on the table. Teacher gives it back. We're kind of like this, like, don't really want to look at it. Right? I don't want to be in that situation in anything. Because now, you know what my biggest job is? Managing people. And a lot of us in this room, all of us in this room in some shape or fashion are managing people. Because of the line of work you're in, you've got to be on. Because if you're responding, if you're getting a call and you're having to tell people what to do in crisis situations, it's not a whole lot of time, right? It's not a whole lot of time to fumble it and not be sure and to feel like I haven't prepared myself. Before every single game, I played the game in my mind. Every single game, I played the game in my head, all 40 minutes, all 4 quarters. And I cannot tell you how many times later on that night in the game, a scenario comes up that I imagined in my head earlier that day. I cannot tell you how many times. I just say that's God, but it is also me thinking through it. So whatever you're responsible for too, think through it. How many different ways have you thought through it? How many different scenarios have you given yourself to think through things so that when something comes up, you're ready to respond with plan A, plan B, and plan C. Now we hope plan A works, right? I say a lot of times there is no plan B. Plan A has to work, right? But are we ready to pivot? And if we are ready to pivot, what does that look like? And have we thought about that? Or have we just said we got to pivot? Because saying we have to pivot is a lot different than saying we have to pivot and this is how we're going to do it. And you're going to call this person, we're going to do that, and this is what we're going to do. Okay. So again, just making sure that you are thinking through things and you're putting your best foot forward. What I like to say is I want to give my best and then I'll surrender the results. I wish we won every game we played. We don't. It just doesn't happen. Right. But if I bring my best, then come what may, whatever happens, I can lay my head down at night knowing that I did my best. And so I can surrender the results. This just wasn't our night. When I feel bad is when I'm thinking, crap, I should have had a follow-up phone call with that recruit. Okay. When she called and said she went somewhere else, like, I know I wasn't as good as I should have been recruiting her. That's what keeps me up at night is when I know I didn't do my part. So always bring your best. And the last thing I'll leave you with before we open up for questions, if that's okay, Tracy, I have no idea what time it is. Are we good? I just get to talking. Is, you know, every day we're building a house. Every day. So there's a little story. There's a guy named John, and he worked for this company that built houses. He worked there for 35 years. So finally, after 35 years, John's ready to retire. Now, John is the best. When you want your house built, you're calling this company, you're saying, hey, I want John to build my house. He's immaculate. He comes early. He stays late. He's very detailed. He is the absolute best. He pours his heart and soul into building these houses. So he finally walks up to his boss and he goes, thank you so much for trusting me for 36 years. I appreciate all that you've done for me, but I'm ready to retire. And his boss says, you know what? Like, I appreciate you so much. This comes as a bit of a shock. I wasn't ready for you to retire. I need you to do one more job. I've already promised a couple that you're going to do their house. I need you to do one more job. And John is like, you know, I really am ready to go. I didn't plan on doing that, but for you, I'll build one more house. So John goes about the business of building this house, right? And I just told you he's immaculate in everything he does, A+ work. He shows up, but he's not the first one there. He stays, but he's not the last one to leave. I would say he's probably given B+ effort. B+ is not bad, is it? Right? Not bad, but it's not his best. His heart's just not quite as in it. A couple months later, he's built the house. He goes back up to his boss, hands him the keys and says, hi, I am done. I finished working on this house. I hope the couple loves it. May I please retire now? And his boss says, sure, John. And he hands him the keys back and he goes, this was your house. My gift to you for all of your service was to let you build the house of your dreams with my money and my materials. I hope you're happy with it. I don't want a B plus house as my retirement house. I don't think y'all do either. But every single day we're building a house. And when people ride by, they're going to have something to say about the house you're building. Every single day when you show up to work, to church, in your community, in your kids' lives, with your parents, whatever it is, you are laying a foundation and somebody is having an opinion about the work you are doing. Are you happy with the house you have right now? Is it a house you want to live in forever? Or do you think we could take it up a few notches? Every single day, all of us are building a house and we're laying a foundation, not only for ourselves, but for the people who are coming after us. And it's our responsibility, and I would say it's our obligation to make sure that we are leaving things better than how we showed up. So make sure you're building a heck of a house that when people ride by, they're saying, man, I want a house like that when I grow up. That's what I want people to say about me. That's what wakes me up in the morning. That's what gets me fired up. That's what has allowed me to have next level success. And then now is what allows me to challenge myself to think about what type of legacy do I want to leave? For women's basketball, for the players that I am blessed to coach and have an impact on, for my family, for my kids, what am I leaving for them? Because when people say things about me, they're going to hear it too. Your family's going to hear it too. And make sure when people ride by and look at your house, they say, hey, slow down, slow down, slow down. We're coming on that house. We're coming up on that house. Make sure your work leaves that type of impression. Thank you so very much. Questions? Do we have any questions about any, y'all? I will answer anything if you don't know that by now. Yes, ma'am.
So you're on the national stage. How do you handle criticism?
Yep, I don't care. I can't say that I was always that way, but I have been like that for a really long time. One of the best things that happened to me was when I got to Louisiana Tech in 2005. I was still really young as an assistant. And I don't know how many of you know, Louisiana Tech was a powerhouse of women's basketball back in the day, like big time powerhouse, Lady Techsters, right? Oh, really? That's awesome. So when I got there in 2005, Louisiana Tech and Tennessee were the only two women's programs in the country who had still made it to every single NCAA tournament. So when I tell you, it was a great experience for me, but the fans were still kind of caught up in the heyday of back in the day, right? And one of the things that Coach Long said to me was, he goes, don't sign up for a blog, don't read it, stay away from it. And the other thing that he taught me was, and this gets me in trouble now, but I still do it. He was like, and don't tell your family stuff. Because what fans will do is find your parents. At the time I wasn't married, I was single. They'll find your parents and they'll go over to your parents and your parents will think they're being nice and they'll pick them for information and your parents will just not even know it, tell stuff. If they don't know it, they can't tell it. And so those things really stuck with me. I'm sure there's all kind of blogs that say all kind of things about me. It does not matter. I don't care. And what I tell our players too is like, if they're not in our practice every day, and if they're not standing in that circle with us every day, they have no opinion on our program. None. What matters is what we say in this huddle and in this room. And so that's what I've really, you've got to have some thick skin. And so again, like it's something that hasn't really bothered me. And it's probably because of those two nuggets that Coach Long gave me when I got to Louisiana Tech as an assistant. Yep. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
So when you were talking about like people are always watching, it kind of reminded me of something I heard one time about you're always interviewing.
Yeah.
So as we help other people as they're coming into the workforce, like a younger generation, do you have any advice on one, how to instill that and how to help them practice as we help them grow?
Yeah, something that we tell our young ladies all the time is like, you're building your brand every single day. And how do you want to do that? Like, well, I want to do this and I want to do that. And I'm like, okay. And if you do that, that's fine, but you're going to close off this section of people because of what that decision you've made. Is that what you want to do? That's fine, but just know what comes with it if you do that. Right. And so we just I try to take real life experiences that have happened somewhere else and show it to them before it happens to them. You know, and there's a lot of examples of that in sports, unfortunately and fortunately, of situations that happen at other universities or professionally. There's a couple years ago, there was a football player who was going to be the #1 NFL draft pick. And 2 days before the draft came out, a video came out of him smoking, right? Some of you could possibly remember that. And he went from the #1 draft pick to like second round. Second round money is good money, but it's not #1 draft pick money. And so I took that scenario and showed it to our team. Everybody has a phone. Everybody is media these days because all it takes is a picture and a post. And so it's just, you know, making sure they understand everywhere you go, no matter if you're doing something innocently or not, somebody, because of a click of a phone, can make it look a certain way. And so you always want to just be thinking through things, which again goes back to the people you have around you. And then we just talk to them a ton about making sure that their network and the people they're around, they're putting themselves in the right position. And then once they're there, it's those everyday habits, right? Are you there early? Are there some things that you figured out about your boss that you can take off their plate to make their life easier? You know, just things like that are constant things that I think are teaching them every single day. And then the other thing is we have to also stop enabling them. A lot of times if they get stuck, if there's something that's happening, because either we don't have time to explain it or we're just used to doing it, we tell them what to do instead of helping them figure it out, right? And so I think a lot of it is too, letting them sit in they don't like that anxiousness of not knowing what to do. Let them figure it out. Give them some tools to help them and be there behind them to make sure they don't completely fall, but they've got to figure some things out on their own too.
So it sounds like you had pretty good mentors, which is a great experience. What would be some advice to somebody that maybe doesn't have the best leadership or the best support group around them?
Yeah. Reach out to someone who, again, like I talked about, I don't know Robin Roberts, but she was a mentor to me and she doesn't know it. Right? I don't know Oprah Winfrey. I took a picture with her one time, but I don't know her. She was a mentor to me. You don't have to have one-on-one Zoom classes and have somebody right under you for them to be a mentor. Pick someone who is doing what you want to do at a high level, or who is carrying themselves in a way that you want to carry yourself, or who is revered in a way that you want to be revered, who is leaving a legacy in a way you want to. You can watch, especially now with the internet, you can pull that up and watch it anytime, and that person can serve as a mentor. The other thing I would say is a lot of times Gino Ariam is a good example for me. Like when I was a young coach, like I mean, Gino, oh my God, there's Gino, oh my God, there's Vivian Stringer. Like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. I want to go over and talk to them, but they don't know me. What are they going to say to me? Like, we've got to get over that piece of it. And what did it for me is I was so embarrassed, but it actually ended up being a good thing. I was going recruiting and Gino's book had just come out and I was going to read it. And so I've got all my luggage and stuff, and then I didn't have room for my book. So I had it in my hand. And I'm walking down the plane, and oh my God, there's Gino right there. And the face of here's his face on the book right here. And I was like, I was so embarrassed. And when I got to his seat, so if I'm walking and Gino knows where Christina is, he goes, "Hey, congrats on the year y'all had at La Tech this year." Right. So you just never know. You just never know. Well, I say that to say, don't be afraid to walk up to that person at a conference, at a convention, send an email, and just start by saying, "Hey, you know what? Congrats on the year. Congrats on getting the promotion. Congrats on meeting this number." The first ask can't be, "Can I be your mentor? Will you mentor me, please? I really love you. Oh my God, oh my God." Like, put some sweat equity into who they are. I'm not saying kiss their butt, right? But shoot them an email saying, "Hi, I just want you to know I've watched you, congrats on hitting that number, congrats on whatever it is," and then circle back around to it. And the other thing I would say in terms of mentors is make sure that when you do get time with your mentor, you aren't wasting their time. If somebody has said they're going to mentor you, come there with a plan. Like, make sure you want a mentor and not a friend. That's two different things. You know, I've had a ton of people who've asked me to mentor them, and listen, I mentor anyone, like I love it. But in some of those situations, I have found out that they don't want me to be there. They may think they want me to be their mentor. They want to be my friend. The questions, the conversation, like there's a difference when somebody is really wanting to learn and grow versus like they just want to be around you. And so I would say, don't be afraid to reach out. The person doesn't have to be somebody who you work with or your direct boss. You can get that from watching people or reaching out, and just make sure you're prepared when that person says yes and you have time with them on the phone, over Zoom, or at the next conference you go to. Make sure you are prepared with high level, thoughtful questions that they know that you really are trying to learn, and not just make a connection or take a picture or say that you had some time with them. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Pivoting, can you talk about maybe a specific example of a time that you had a really big curveball thrown at you and kind of the steps you took to get from, oh crap, this is happening, to a new plan, mode of action?
Yeah, last year, leaving Georgia and coming here. No, the first one would be Troy. And then another time that I had to pivot to was I was dead set on, it's hard to get me to change. Like I'm comfortable in that setting. I like things, and I'm not saying I want, but you've got to have some hardcore evidence to get me to kind of change the way we've been doing things. And so the first 3 years at Georgia, we had this transition and it looked great. We just weren't getting anything out of it. We weren't getting anything out of it at all. And I finally had to say to myself, like, change or die. Change or die. And we brought someone in who had been running a different style of offense and transition. And she came in and walked through it with our staff. And then she had like 3 or 4 more Zooms with us on it. And we changed going into year 5. And it was the best decision. I mean, changed completely from what we had been doing before. And it's also uncomfortable because I don't know it. And so I'm not confident teaching it. And so that's also, I want to stay like with what's comfortable because I can do it. I know it. I've been doing it for all these years. I don't have to plan for it. I don't have to take time to study something new. And that also traps us up sometimes too. And that, so I pivoted there. I'm very, very glad I did. Another small pivot for me was once a year in the SEC, we always end up playing 3 games in 1 week. Normally we play on Thursday and Sunday. But once a year, everybody's going to play a Monday, Thursday, Sunday. And that is really hard in our league. Our league is physical. It's the best league in the country. It is tough to play 3 games in a week. And our Monday, Thursday, Sunday that week, we were, I don't remember where we were on Monday, but this is when I was at Georgia, Eastern time zone. We played a team in the Central time zone on Monday at 8 o'clock. So Monday at 8 o'clock is 9 o'clock our time. And then when we fly home that night, we lose an hour. And so we get home at 1 or 2 in the morning. We go to school on Tuesday. We leave Wednesday. I do remember Wednesday's game. We were playing Alabama on Thursday. We get to Alabama Wednesday night. We play Alabama Central time zone on a Thursday at 8 p.m. It's 9 o'clock for us. We get back really late. Our players have to get up and go to school in the morning. So we get back at like 1 o'clock in the morning. And I wake up Friday morning and I feel like I have been hit by a bus. We played really poorly on Thursday night, won the game in double overtime. We played Florida on Sunday. Florida was our rival when I was at Georgia. That game was at 12 o'clock. So we have 2 late games on a Thursday and a noon tip-off on Sunday. That is brutal. And 2 of those games are on the road. So I wake up Friday morning and I am just like, what the heck? And I'm thinking, if I feel this way, how do the players feel? And they had an 8 o'clock class, or they had this. But crap, we were bad last night. And we need to practice today because we have to practice Friday, Saturday to get ready for Sunday because Florida's really good. And if we win this game on Sunday, we're going to clinch this and this, this, this. And so I was going back and forth on what to do. And I called Coach Landers and I talked him through it. And he was like, do not practice them today. And I said, but did you see how bad we were last night? Like, da, 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 da. And talking to him, he made me pivot. And instead of practicing, he said, push practice back and from 4 to 6. Don't tell them they're not going to practice. Watch some film, talk to them, and then feed them a really good heavy meal, and they will go to sleep. But he was like, you want to do that at 4 and not 6. Because you do it at 4, they're going to go to sleep, and they're going to wake up at 8, and they're going to go to the movies, or they're going to go out. Do it at 6, watch film for about an hour, give them a good meal, then they'll sleep through the night. And it was the best decision that I would have made. And in that case, if I hadn't talked to him, I'm not sure I would have done it. And so it's why you need people to tell you things. But those are some small pivots. And then obviously, when I had the opportunity to be involved with this job last year, it was a huge pivot for me. Same profession, but I've been at Georgia for 11 years. I never thought I was leaving Georgia. And then when this opportunity came along and I started looking into it, I was like, oh my gosh, like, how do I pass this up? Right. And even when I knew it was the right thing to do, I was trying to figure out how to talk myself out of it. Because again, like, I had created in my mind, this is where I'm going to be. Like, we're winning, we're rolling, like, why would I leave? But when I looked at long term of where we wanted to be, what we wanted to do, there was no doubt that this was the better opportunity. And that was a hard pivot. Every other job that I've had to move, it was me making the decision by myself. Now I've got a husband, I've got 2 kids, I've got a family, I've got to move. At the end of the day, for me, what I think about is, if I decide to stay, am I settling? And y'all, me settling is just hard. It's a no. It is a hard no for me on my non-negotiables. Like, it's just hard for me to settle. And I knew I would have died a slow death walking in that office every day, knowing that I had settled and that there was possibly a better opportunity for me across the country, but a better opportunity for me. And so even though my heart was hurting to do it, I've got to walk in a locker room and tell the young ladies that I've recruited that came to play at Georgia, but for me and our staff, that I'm leaving. And I'm going to the same conference. That's hard. That's hard. But that was a hard pivot, but it was the right thing to do. So those are a few pivots that I've had. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So along that same line, I talked about risk. As women, we are very good at talking ourselves in and out.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
How do you tell them between fear because I'm not supposed to be there?
Mhm.
Or fear because I'm serious about it?
Yep. For me, I start by making a list, pros and cons, right? Of what, in 5 years, what do I want? And in 5 years, 10 years, if I stay here, am I going to get it? If I stay here, will I not get it? Right. And are those like things that are deal breakers for me in those decisions? And I think the other thing is just, again, part of my time in the morning is just having some quiet time to think through stuff, because it's really hard to make decisions when there's so much coming at you, people in your face, people are talking to you. When I made the decision to come here, other than obviously the people who I was talking to at Texas A&M and one person on our staff and my husband, nobody knew. My parents found out the day before it was announced. I didn't tell my mom and dad. Because you can also get too many people in your ear. And that's not good either. This is a quote I read a long time ago, and it has stuck with me. Don't tell somebody about your problems that can't help you fix them. And we like to do that a lot. We like to just call and tell our friend. And if my friend, even if she is my best friend, if she is not in a position to help me fix the problem, then why am I giving it to her? I'm wasting time. And I'm putting something on her that she can't help me fix, or that he can't help me fix. And so again, the people you have, they need to look different. Your circle of trust cannot be all Black females, white males, Black men. You've got to have different people to have different perspectives. They can't all be moms. They can't all be just career women. I need different people for different scenarios. And based on what's happening, that's who I need to call to figure out, am I thinking the right way on this? The other thing I say all the time is don't get a bird with a broke wing and then complain when it can't fly. It had a broke wing when you got it. Okay. So those things kind of help me as I'm navigating, making decisions. And if I'm afraid of this because that just doesn't sound right over there, or I'm afraid of this because I'm afraid of just throwing myself into the fire. And the other thing is, with our network and coaching, and I'm sure it's very similar here, like if there's an opportunity, you probably know someone who has been with that company or that group, or someone who has been with that company or group that can kind of vet it out and say, hey, he's a good person or she's a great person to work for, or that company looks great on paper, but their, benefits or this or that is a little shaky. Or I've heard a ton of people who, I just try to, there was somebody who I called about this job who I did not know. To kind of get her opinion, because she had taken a pivot and it did not work out well. And I just wanted to know, hey, if you had a chance to do it again, would you do it? And what would you do differently? And that really helped me in making this decision. So I think number one, knowing what my goals are for the 5, 10 years down the road, what I want it to look like. And if I stay, can I get there? And sometimes when it's hardest, when both places you can get there, right? Then it maybe becomes some other things to help you make that decision. But just having that list of those things and then calling the right person, not everybody, because then you just get more and more confused. Anybody else have questions? Those are great questions. Yes, ma'am.
After following somebody who held a position for so long, what struggles or tips do you have for making that your own?
Yeah, great question. I did it twice because at Georgia, Andy Landers was the only head coach at Georgia. He was there for 36 years. I was the second full-time head coach at Georgia. And he's a Hall of Famer, 5 Final Fours. And so when I came here, a reporter said, "Are you just crazy or what?" And I said, "Yeah, I like a little bit of a challenge, no big deal." I think the biggest thing is I never want to take away the tradition and what has been done here. Right? Just like if you're taking over someone who has had that type of legacy and that type of career, if it's not, broke, don't try to fix it, right? Things that work, leave it, and always honor and respect and have a bit of reverence for what that person or those people have done, because you would not have the opportunity if it weren't for them. At the same time, you cannot be them. When I first got to Georgia, I went to SEC meetings. There are head coaches meetings that we have in Destin every spring, and different people come in and talk about things, and ESPN comes in to talk about like media and micing you up for games and this and that. And one of the people from ESPN said to me, "Welcome, Joni." He's like, "Coach Landers was always good for a joke or two when he had the mic. I sure hope you got your jokes ready." And I said, "I'm not Coach Landers." Like, don't let people put things on you. If it's something that you can do and you want to do, great. But be yourself and embrace and respect and always honor what came before you. Always honor those people, make them feel a part of, because what I've also learned is if you're taking over for someone who's done that and they're retiring or they moved on or whatever the situation is, that's still kind of like their baby too. Like it's still something that they have worked really hard on and put a lot of sweat equity in. So I always want them to feel a part of. Big luncheon, big function, big weekend. Hey, I'll make sure you're here. We want to celebrate this with you. Make sure you're always thinking about them and the comments you give and paying respect to them. But be who you are. Don't try to be who you're replacing, because you've got to be your authentic self or it's not going to work. There's only one you. Nobody can be you. Nobody can be me. And I can't be anybody else. And so I think that's what I would say to you in those situations. Yep. Yes, sir.
I'd like 10 questions. So you mentioned along the way, obviously, you progressed up through the ranks, but you mentioned there's always this decision point about, you mentioned in the interview, Kirby Smart, and that's coming about how he's going to tell his spot.
Yeah.
But all coaches, and their families, you're in a business which is tough.
Mhm.
So along the way, have you made changes to the culture of each organization to allow that to be less stressful? Things, and so what time? And then I'll have.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's fine. Great question. And yes, and I didn't even have the foresight to do it. Carla Williams, who hired me at Georgia, she was the deputy director of athletics there. She's now the AD at Virginia. When I got the Georgia job in 2015, not married, engaged, but not married and no kids, she put in my contract that 2 caregivers could travel with me, so that when I had kids, 2 caregivers came on every trip for free. And caregivers could be caregivers, they could be parents, but 2 people counted as caregivers. I didn't have that type of foresight. Thank goodness that she did. And so that has been something that has been a non-negotiable for me moving forward. Same thing with our staff. Like when we have any trip, obviously if somebody on our staff has kids and they're in school, it's hard for them to go on every trip. But SEC tournament, Thanksgiving trips, Christmas trips, foreign tours, family is allowed. Family can come to practice. You can, if you have a kid and they have a soccer game in the middle of practice, you can leave early to go watch practice. Like family is most important. Like we make that work however we need to. So that is something that we definitely have adopted and done, and it makes things a lot easier. My 6-year-old is now in kindergarten, so our kids did not travel as much this year, but before kindergarten, they came on every trip with us. And so that does help when you have that type of setup, and we would do the same thing for anybody on our staff. What's your second question?
Deciding which to attend. This is from a grandparent perspective, because I have a bunch of grandkids and best they develop. You recruit the best from their respective programs, but once they reach this level, competition's tough.
Mhm.
So how do you help them overcome their lack of confidence?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing because again, you're the best in your school, you're the best in your state, and then you come to college and everybody was the Gatorade Player of the Year, right? And so what we talk about from a basketball perspective is when the ball is not in your hands, how do you bring value? And that really helps them not feel like I'm not scoring or I'm not playing. Like, how do you bring value in practice every day? Are you a good teammate? Are you cheering? Are you going to get a rebound? Are you setting a good screen? Like, the ball is in your hands. Even the best players, if you take a 40-minute game, the ball is probably in their hands 10 minutes total to score, right? The rest of those 30 minutes that they're on the floor, what are you doing to make an impact? And so there's a lot of players who, when the ball is not in their hands, they're just out there. And there's a lot of other players who, when the ball is not in their hands, they're impacting the game in other ways, defensively, rebounding, their energy, how they cheer. And so what we really try to tell young people who are coming in is, number one, make sure that you aren't just somebody who can only make an impact when the ball is in your hands. And that helps them get outside of themselves and thinking about, I've got to score, I've got to score. And the other thing we try to tell them is be in the best shape you can be in when you get here. In fact, if there's one piece of advice that I think transcends any sport, anything they're doing, like, be in the best shape you can be in. Because if you're not, it's hard to learn information when you're trying to breathe, right? When you're trying to breathe, you're just trying to breathe. That's all your brain is thinking about. I need oxygen. I got to breathe. I got to breathe. But if you're in pretty good shape, then that frees you up to actually learn and listen and retain what is being taught. Because basketball is basketball, soccer is soccer, tennis is tennis. The terminology is what's different, and the pace of the game is what's different. And that's what trips up young people. What we call a down screen, they may call something else. And so the terminology is different. And your brain gets stuck trying to figure out all these new things. And so they walk away saying, oh my gosh, it's so hard. No, it's not. It's basketball. The language is different. And you learn the language a lot faster when you can retain it and you're not trying to breathe, right? So we just try to tell them to be in the best shape they can be in. And then a lot of times I hear players say, man, I go in the gym and I get up 500 shots every day. Okay, great. But at what speed are you doing that? Because if it's not game pace, game speed, then sure, we can all go in and shoot 500 shots and take a water break and shoot some more. And so it's just the pace, because in college, we're on time. Like, we don't just get to practice as long as we want to. We have 20 hours a week in season, and only 8 hours a week in the summer. And so what we can't do as coaches is every time we explain a drill, we introduce something, teach it from scratch every single day, because we're wasting time. We're losing time. And so it moves very, very, very fast. And so the pace at which they do things is helpful. So if they are getting ready to go to college, and they know they want to compete at that level, I try to tell them in high school, do everything with the high level pace as you can, like game speed. And if you don't know what that looks like, go to a practice and watch it. So have good pace in what you do it full speed, and be in really good shape. And then try to think outside of yourselves in terms of when the ball's in your hand. For sports that are solo sports like golf and tennis and gymnastics that are like you versus you, and this is important for all sports, but the mental side of it is like, I just made a mistake. How do I get back right so I don't take one mistake and turn it into 2 or 3? And so training them to have 3 or 4 nuggets that they tell themselves to get them back in this right space. Because what I say is change the channel, right? Bad thoughts come in your head, right? But I'm not going to sit there and watch the movie. I'm going to change the channel, right? So you can also, but that's hard to do, especially for females. It's hard to do. And so putting books in their hands, giving them quotes, giving them a song, whatever it is that gets them to change the channel quicker, because their response time, and the quicker they can learn to respond from a perceived failure or mistake, often has as much to do with the outcome of things as the event that happened. It's our response to said event that determines our outcome, not the actual event. And we get so stuck on the event, this thing happened to me. There's a whole lot of things that are going to happen to us that we can't control. And some things we can control, but there's a lot that we can't control. We can always control our response to it. And so getting them to have a quick response time and a positive and a right response time, more than likely has more to do with the outcome than the thing that happened to us.
Online question, have you ever helped a player overcome an injury in which they could no longer play the sport? If so, how did you help them reevaluate their dreams and goals to continue to reach their potential in other ways?
It's happened, unfortunately, a lot of times. And I think that's what we try to tell our young ladies is basketball is what you do. It is not who you are. And so when they come in as freshmen, we ask them 2 questions. And one of them is, tell me 2 things you want to accomplish while you're here at our university that have nothing to do with basketball. Because they all want to go play professionally, or they all just eat, sleep, breathe basketball. So I want to know 2 things you want to accomplish while you're here that have nothing to do with basketball. And some of them have that answer, but they would have never told me if I hadn't asked because they're afraid of me holding it against them, right? No, we're going to help you do that. Like, we're at a university that has networking and resources. Why wouldn't we help you do those things? So number one, those players who are afraid to tell me that gives them the opportunity to share with me their vulnerabilities and their dreams that don't have anything to do with basketball. The other thing it tells me is the players who don't have any idea at all, I know we need to start trying to help them figure out what else they're passionate about, because the ball is going to stop bouncing for everybody. It happens quicker for some, longer for others, but everybody is going to have to pivot at some point when it comes to that. And for the ones who had a season-ending injury or career-ending injury that's been through concussion, sometimes it's been like multiple knee surgeries. We have hopefully got them to a space where they are already thinking about what that thing is they want to do, and we can kind of steer them towards that. We've also allowed them to still travel with the team and help out in some way, like you're still on the team. You can't play anymore, but this is your stat you're going to keep on the bench. This is what you're responsible for in practice. So it's making sure that they don't feel like they're cast away because they're no longer valuable. It's helping them find value with us as much as they want to. We've had players who have had to medical out and they were completely fine and they were still around and their school was paid for and they were off on their own. And we had players who needed to still be a part of our team. So I think everybody's different. But what we want to do is try to help them get that figured out before a career-ending injury happens, so that they understand their value is not in basketball, because it is really hard to watch someone transition out of basketball when they don't know what to do with themselves, because that's all they know. That is a hard thing to watch. And unfortunately, it happens a ton in all sports. And so we start off by just trying to talk to them about, this is what you do. This is not who you are. And it's also a privilege. It's a privilege to do this. It's not anything that's guaranteed or a right. All right, I think that's it. Thank you guys so very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jen.
You're welcome.
I'm not gonna be shy about saying this. I would love to hang out with you, Fred. My brother is the assistant coach at Tech Women's right now.
Oh, really?
A lot of things you said, first of all, resonated with me on a personal level, but also maybe I shouldn't be so hard on you when you can't make it home for certain things. No, our takeaway that I got from your presentation, or just a few little, everything you said was amazing, by the way. Just know who you are to find your passion. Sometimes that's best determined by knowing what you don't want. Take time for yourself. I think that's something, again, as women, we definitely need to remind each other of. We just had this conversation with a coworker the other day, and I was like, you don't even feel well, like, go home, why are you here? You know, make sure you have enough in the can to like be here every day and refill yourself and help your team. So surround yourself with people who challenge you. I think no job is too small. I think that's a great point, like be humble. I used to think about it. I had a scenario where somebody said something one day and they were like, oh, that's not my job, that's not my job responsibility. I'm like, you're a manager, so like everything's kind of your responsibility. So that spoke to me as well. And then I like that you said, don't shut out possibilities for the future what ifs. And then be prepared for the pivot and to pivot. I think that's great. It's great advice all the way around. So thank you very much.